Malaysia's parliament will hold a special session on January 20th to discuss the recent floods that have devastated parts of the country. Prime Minister Ismail Sabri Yaakob says the agenda will include the recovery effort as well as disaster management. Now, the continuous torrential rainfall hitting many states was the worst the country had experienced in 100 years. Intense flooding forcing thousands of residents to be displaced from their homes and leaving streets filled with mud and debris. More than 50 people lost their lives in the extreme weather. So for Asian Insider this week, we want to focus on the demand for answers in the aftermath of the deadly floods. And joining me now from Kuala Lumpur is our Malaysia correspondent, Ram Anand. So Ram, the floods were unprecedented, but according to some, not unexpected. Did authorities not heed the warning signs?
Floods has been a recurring problem in Malaysia for the past few years. I think in 2014 we had very bad flooding that sort of displaced 200,000 people. And some of the places that were badly affected by floods this time around, like Sri Muda and Shah Alam, floods are quite a bit of a norm in those places. Of course, it's never as severe as the past, what happened 2 weeks ago, but it has always been there, the floods. But I think, unfortunately, no mitigating action has been taken all of it this year that sort of resolves the flooding once and for all. So it became a recurring problem over the years, but never bad enough that lives were lost or there was, a huge loss of life or huge loss of property until this abnormal amount of rainfall happened 2 weeks ago, and it caused extensive damage to both lives and livelihoods.
Questions have also been raised about Malaysia's readiness to deal with emergencies. Ram, you saw the devastation firsthand in Shah Alam. What help is there for the victims?
I think the issue with preparedness, disaster preparedness, has been raised quite a bit. There's an inquest going on about how the government has handled the floods, not just the government, but all the relevant agencies and the warning systems that are in place. There will be a special parliament sitting on January 20th to look further into the mitigation and how we can change our disaster response to such events in the future. In Shah Alam, I'd say the help was quite late coming because in that particular area where I visited, Sri Muda, it took nearly a week before flood waters were completely drained out of that area because that place is, it sits below the river, the Klang River bed. So the water just was stagnant for a very, very long time, and they had to pump out the water using a sluice that was malfunctioning initially. So help has just started coming in. The government has announced a bit of aid for people who have lost lives, relatives, and also damages to properties due to the floods. I think the total, the Prime Minister said, can come up to 61,000 ringgit. But of course, we are talking about people who have probably lost a large amount of their belongings, part of their homes that they probably own, and also cars that will take months to repair, if at all it could be repaired. So I would say help has been very slow in coming in, and the government is still trying to ramp up. There's a lot of calls for the government to allow for withdrawals from the Employer Provident Fund yet again, which was tapped into for the COVID-19 pandemic. But this time the government has not approved for such withdrawals because I think they believe that allowing withdrawals for every disaster that happens is going to set a bad precedent because that fund is meant to be tapped into post-retirement as a retirement saving and not for disaster relief. So I think that goes to show there's an appetite for even more funds to be channeled from the government to the people. The people are expecting even more funds to be channeled in, even more cash aid and handouts. And they feel whatever that is being handed out right now is still not sufficient for them.
Thanks so much for the update. Ram Anand, Malaysia correspondent for the Straits Times. Our team in Malaysia will continue to report on the aftermath of the floods and the cleanup operations that are underway. You can find all the stories they've filed at str.sg/Asia.